Hola otra vez. Hello again and welcome to our Coffee Break Spanish live session tonight. It is Wednesday the 28th of February and I am delighted to be here. If you don't know me, my name's Mark. I am the founder of Coffee Break Languages and I work with a fantastic team of teachers and lots of other colleagues who help us put all of the content together for Coffee Break Spanish and indeed our 9 other languages. Tonight we're going to be talking about Spanish and we're going to be talking about a particular aspect of Spanish. First of all, I am delighted to see many of you here, so let us know where you're watching from. And we'll be doing a little bit of interactivity in this session, so I'll be asking you to post in the comments. Now, we're broadcasting on YouTube, on our Coffee Break Spanish YouTube channel. We're also broadcasting on our Coffee Break Languages YouTube channel. If you're a Spanish learner, make sure you subscribe to the Coffee Break Spanish YouTube channel because that's where we're going to be posting lots of new Spanish content over the coming weeks and months. And we're also broadcasting on Facebook. And I am delighted to be here and I hope you're all excited to be watching this session. I had a little bit of a technical hitch there just at the last minute as I logged on to everything. It's a couple of months since we've done a live. And of course I had to go through, please click on all the fire hydrants and then please click on all the motorcycles. And I was trying to click on all these things and it all wasn't working. But I'm delighted that we've got things working now. And I can see that lots of you are joining us from lots of places. We've got Rafael here in Chicago. We've got Adele in Bristol. We've got Milena in Norway. We've got Andrew in Arizona. Lots of you joining us live, and it's great to have you here. As I said, I'll be asking you some questions a little later on. We'll be talking through one particular aspect of Spanish grammar, and that is, let me see if I've got my slides here, that is the imperfect tense. Because using the imperfect is very important because it's the tense that gives all the context when you're telling a story. It's the tense that tells you what was happening, how the weather was, what people were like, and so on. So it's a really useful tense for narration in the past to give a little bit more information about the situation that you were in. And when we're learning a language, the really important thing is that we try to expand our knowledge, expand our abilities in the language whenever we can. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing with our Coffee Break lesson tonight, but also with our Coffee Break Masterclass, because this lesson, this is a sample lesson from our Coffee Break Spanish Masterclass, which, believe it or not, starts on Friday. It's running from March through to the end of August, and I'll tell you a little more about that later on this evening. Of course, it may well not be evening where you are. You may be watching in West Coast America, in which case it is early afternoon. No, it's not even earlier. Yeah, it's early afternoon in West Coast America. But here in Scotland, it is 7 o'clock at night, and we're looking forward to talking a little about the imperfect tense. Shall we get started? Vamos a empezar. So let's think about this. I'm going to give you some sentences in English, and we're going to think about what these mean. And then we'll talk about how they would work in Spanish. So first of all, we went to Argentina and Chile last year. Have a think about that. When did that happen? Did it happen multiple times? Did it just happen once? Was it an ongoing situation? I have travelled to lots of South American countries. Think about that. Again, it's a past situation. I have travelled over the past few years or over the past many years and so on. I have travelled to lots of South American countries. Another example of a past tense. My father used to live in Buenos Aires. There's another example of a past tense. All of these are past tenses, and that's why we can't really talk about the past tense, because in Spanish we have at least 3, actually, a good number more, but we're going to be looking at one of these 3 tonight. If we think about what these actually mean, we went to Argentina and Chile last year. We would be using a preterite for that in Spanish. I have travelled to lots of South American countries. We'd be using a perfect tense for that. And my father used to live in Buenos Aires. That would be our imperfect. And that's the one we're focusing on tonight, because it's a tense that's used, as I said, to describe situations, to talk about ongoing things in the past. Now, if you're wondering about the preterite and the perfect, then these are covered in our masterclass. So don't worry about that. But today we're going to be focusing, as I said, on the imperfect. Let's keep going. Let's have a look at how the imperfect tense is used. It's used for repeated actions in the past, actions that happened a number of times. It's also used for ongoing actions in the past. For example, when something was ongoing and something else perhaps interrupted it. It's used for what we call incomplete actions in the past. They've not completed yet. They're not finished yet. And it's used for states of being. So talking about feelings, talking about the weather, things like that in the past. It describes what we used to do. My father used to live in Buenos Aires. And it talks about something that was done on more than one occasion. I used to dance every day as a child. So all of these situations are where we use the imperfect tense. It describes what was happening. So, for example, we were watching television at the time when something else happened, perhaps my mother called or something like that. And it can translate would. But this is where we've got to put an alarm bell, because it only translates would when we refer to a repeated action in the past. So they would walk along the beach hand in hand every night at sunset. Again, it's that repeated action in the past. It's not, I would buy a house in the south of Spain if I had the money. That's a different type of would. That's a conditional would. But here we're talking about that would in the past, where we're thinking back and reflecting on something. They would walk along the beach hand in hand. I would visit my grandfather every Saturday morning. That kind of ongoing, repeated action in the past. Okay, so far so good. Just remember that warning there. We definitely need to be careful about would when we're translating would in English. That can be one of two things. It can either be this imperfect tense or it can be a conditional. Again, the conditional is covered in the masterclass, so don't worry about that. So it's normally used to talk about most descriptions in the past, to talk about people, places, clothes, feelings, weather. It was warm, imperfect tense, and he wore a t-shirt and shorts. Again, imperfect tense, describing what he was wearing. Now, so far we're talking about English examples, and we're going to be going into looking at Spanish examples, of course, in just a moment. So there are some triggers that really mean that we need to think about an imperfect. And these ones are really useful because they'll help you they will help you remember that these particular triggers need the imperfect tense. They're the ones that will help you know that, oh, I need an imperfect tense here. And they're all talking about frequency and repeated action. Things like a veces, sometimes, frecuentemente, frequently, cada día, every day, siempre, always, todos los días, every day, de vez en cuando, from time to time. Let's go back through these together. And this time, I'd like you to repeat them after me. And if we repeat them, it will help us remember that these are imperfect triggers. So I'll say the word, then you repeat after me. And if you're in a crowded train or something like that, don't worry about repeating. If people ask you what you're doing, just tell them you're learning Spanish with Coffee Break Spanish. So here it goes. A veces. So sometimes, at times. Frecuentemente. Frequently. Cada día. Each day. Siempre. Always. Todos los días. Every day. De vez en cuando. From time to time. We'll say that one again. It's a little tricky. De vez en cuando. Muy bien. From time to time. Excelente. Okay, so those are our imperfect triggers. So far, so good. I hope that this is all making sense so far. We've just really focused on English scenarios to help us remember when we would use the imperfect in Spanish. But what I'd like to ask you to do is post a 1, 2, or a 3 in the comments. And this will let me know if you're understanding what I'm teaching you. So 1, I'm a bit confused. 2, some bits make sense so far. Or 3, all good. So let me know in the comments what you think so far. Are you confused? are some bits making sense, or is everything good so far? So I'm already seeing some numbers coming in. That is good to know. I'm seeing lots of threes, which is really good. In the meantime, Rauf is saying, I learned Espanol from you. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias a ti, Rauf. Excellent. Lots of threes, a couple of twos. That's good. Don't worry if you are finding this too difficult at the moment, because we've got lots of other content that will help you. Simply go to coffeebreakspanish.com and you'll find our beginners course there, and we will be able to help you build your beginner's Spanish. But hopefully things are making sense so far. As I said, we've only been focusing on the English at this point. We're going to now take a look at Spanish, and we're going to be doing a little listening exercise as well a bit later on. Let's move on. We're going to look at conjugating the imperfect tense. As you know, in Spanish, verbs have conjugations, and that means that there is a different form of the verb for each person, if you like. So there are typically 6 persons. There's I, you, he, she, or it, we, you plural, and they. Okay, those are our 6 persons, and every Spanish verb can be conjugated. That's not entirely true. Most Spanish verbs can be conjugated in those 6 persons. Now, there's great news about the imperfect, and I'll tell you that a little later. But what we need to think about here, let me just pause the notifications on this. What we need to think about here in terms of the conjugation is how we are going to form regular verbs in the imperfect tense. So let's take our AR verbs. A verb like hablar, hablar, to speak. Now, hablar has a conjugation in the present tense. Hablo, hablas, habla, hablamos, habláis, hablan. But when we put it into the imperfect tense, then it takes a different conjugation. It takes a different set of endings, which translate as I was speaking, you were speaking, and so on. We change the verb in English as well, but it works a little differently in English, and there's not quite as much change. But let's go through hablar in the imperfect. And again, I want you to be repeating here, okay? So make sure you're repeating after me when I say each of these words. And also, whenever I do a verb, I also use my hand signals here because I think that helps. So I'm going to do that. Feel free to do that. Don't do it if you're driving. Okay, please don't. That would not be good. Hablaba, I was speaking. Hablabas, you were speaking. Hablaba, he, she, it, or indeed you polite were speaking. Hablábamos. Now watch the stress there. It's hablábamos. So hablábamos, we were speaking. Hablabais, and again watch the stress. Hablabais, you were speaking. You all, plural, were speaking. Hablaban, they were speaking. Now, a couple of little points here. First of all, going back to that hablabais, the vosotros form. If you are focused on Spain, or on Spanish as it's spoken in some Latin American countries, then maybe you're not so familiar with the vosotros form. However, since it's used in Spanish literature, since you might be watching a TV show or a film from mainland Spain, then it's always worth learning that part of the verb too. So just go through with all of the 6 verb conjugations. So, hablaba, hablabas, hablaba, hablábamos, hablabais, hablaban. And this is how we form the imperfect tense of hablar. And the same goes for bailar, to dance. I was dancing, bailaba. You were dancing, bailabas, and then it would go on bailaba, bailábamos, bailabais, bailaban, and so on. So AR verbs, really straightforward. And the bonus with them is, of course, that the ending just so happens to sound like my favourite pop group. Anyway, we'll move on because we've got the first bit of good news here, and that is ER and IR verbs have the same endings in the imperfect tense. Muy bien. So let's take, comer, to eat. So again, we take off the ending because we go to the first part, the stem of the verb, com, we take off the ER and add these endings. So it will be comía, I was eating. Comías, you were eating. Comía, he, she, it was eating, or you were eating formal. Comíamos, we were eating. Comíais, you all were eating. Comían, they were eating. Straightforward, okay? So again, we're conjugating comer in the imperfect tense, and the same works for for IR verbs. So let's take abrir, to open. Abría, abrías, abría, abríamos, abríais, abrían. So I was opening, you were opening, they were opening, and so on. So that is abrir, an IR verb, and comer, an ER verb. Two lovely regular verbs, and in the imperfect tense. Okay, now I said there was good news. And the good news is that we're going to look at irregular verbs now. But the great news with the imperfect tense is that there aren't very many of them. Let's take a look at them. First of all, ir, the verb to go. So iba is kind of a combination of the aba endings and the ia endings, if you like. So this is an IR verb in a sense, but it's using the AR endings. Iba, I was going. Ibas, you were going. Iba, he or she or it or you, polite, were going. Íbamos, we were going. Ibais, you were going. Iban, they were going. So that's ir in the imperfect. Next imperfect verb, irregular, is ser. So this is I was, you were, or I was being, which sounds a bit funny, but I was a doctor, era médico, when I started my career, something like that. Era, eras, era, éramos, erais, eran. So to be in the imperfect tense, ser. And guess what? Our last irregular verb, only 3 irregular verbs in the whole imperfect tense. It's fantastic news. Ver, to see. And again, this is one of these combinations. It's got a kind of ia, but it's also got the letter E of the infinitive kept in there. So, veía, I was seeing. Veías, you were seeing. Veía, he, she, it was seeing, or you, polite, were seeing. Veíamos, we were seeing. Veíais, you all were seeing. Veían, they were seeing. And those, believe it or not, are all of the irregular verbs. So you now know how to conjugate every single verb in Spanish in the imperfect tense. Muy bien. Okay, asking you the question again. So far, so good. We've looked at how the imperfect tense works when we use it, but now we've also looked at how to conjugate the imperfect tense. And I realize if this is new, this might be a lot of information to take on board at the one time. However, hopefully it all is making sense. Let me know in the comments whether it's a 1, 2, or a 3. And I'm very glad again to see some 3s coming in. In fact, all 3s so far. That's great. Okay, good. We can move on. We're going to do a little listening activity, and this is taken straight from our Masterclass content. And the listening activity is a conversation. You're going to be listening to a conversation, and you're going to hear lots of examples of the imperfect tense. Now, this is quite a jump from what we've been doing so far, so don't worry too much. We're going to listen once, and then I will bring actually, I'm trying to think. Are we listening? I think we're listening with the text on the screen from the outset. Let's do the listening activity. I can't quite remember because I've been so busy preparing everything tonight. I'm not quite sure whether we're going to see the words on screen first or whether you're just going to hear it. But again, this is taken from our Masterclass content. Let's have a listen.
Tengo que pedirte un favor. ¿Puedo hacerte algunas preguntas para un trabajo de clase? Tengo que comparar cómo viven los niños hoy en día y cómo viven...
Okay, I'm going to stop it there because as you can see, there's no text on screen. But what I would like you to do is try to work out as much of the meaning as you can. It's going to be quite tricky and it's quite fast. And it's a conversation between two people. One is asking about some information about how things used to be. In particular, I'm being asked how things were when I was a child. Because the person who's speaking to me is doing a little bit of work for a project. Okay, so you're not going to see the text on the screen as we listen first time, but then we'll listen again with the text on the screen. Don't worry if this seems quite a jump. We'll have a go at listening now.
Tengo que pedirte un favor. ¿Puedo hacerte algunas preguntas para un trabajo de clase? Tengo que comparar cómo viven los niños hoy en día y cómo vivían hace años.
Por supuesto.
Estupendo, pues vamos a empezar. Primera pregunta. ¿Cuántas horas de clase tenías en el colegio? Aproximadamente, claro. Puedes comparar con el horario de clase de tus hijos, por ejemplo.
Pues no le recuerdo exactamente, pero yo estaba en el colegio menos tiempo del que están mis hijos. Íbamos más temprano, pero siempre comíamos en casa.
¿Qué hacías en tu tiempo libre?
En mi tiempo libre solía leer y jugar con mis hermanos y mis vecinos.
¿Ayudabas con las tareas de la casa?
Sí, ayudamos todos. Es cierto que mi madre se encargaba de la mayoría de las tareas domésticas, pero hacíamos cosas como recoger nuestra habitación, poner la mesa, quitarla.
Pues esto es todo. Muchas gracias.
De nada? Okay. So Rosa finished off the interview there quite quickly, but we had lots of good examples of our imperfect tenses. Okay, so that little clip of audio, as I said, is taken from our Masterclass course. And you can hear it's a conversation between myself and Rosa. And Rosa's asking me about experiences when I was younger. So, describing events in the past, that's when we're going to be using this imperfect tense. And you heard some imperfect tenses there. As I said, that might have been quite a challenge. It might have been quite quick to listen to. We're going to listen again this time with the transcript on the screen. So, let's have a look at this.
Tengo que pedirte un favor. ¿Puedo hacerte algunas preguntas para un trabajo de clase? Tengo que comparar cómo viven los niños hoy en día y cómo vivían hace años.
Por supuesto.
Estupendo. Pues vamos a empezar. Primera pregunta. ¿Cuántas horas de clase tenías en el colegio? Aproximadamente, claro. Puedes comparar con el horario de clase de tus hijos.
Pues no lo recuerdo exactamente, pero yo estaba en el colegio menos tiempo del que están mis hijos. Íbamos más tempranos, pero siempre comíamos en casa.
¿Qué hacías en tu tiempo libre?
En mi tiempo libre solía leer y jugar con mis hermanos y mis vecinos.
¿Ayudabas con las tareas de casa?
Sí, ayudábamos todos. Es cierto que mi madre se encargaba de la mayoría de las tareas domésticas, pero hacíamos cosas como recoger nuestra habitación, poner la mesa, quitarla.
Pues esto es todo. Muchas gracias, Mar. Tengo que...
Tiempo. Okay, hopefully you can hear me now. I have just brought the text back on the screen there. Tengo que pedirte un favor. Rosa starts by saying, I need to ask you a favor. ¿Puedo hacerte algunas preguntas para un trabajo de clase? Can I ask you some questions for a piece of homework? Tengo que comparar cómo viven los niños hoy en día y cómo vivían hace años. I need to compare how children live nowadays with how they used to live. Vivían, there's our first imperfect tense, hace años, years ago. And I say, of course, por supuesto. So she begins. Primera pregunta, ¿cuántas horas de clase tenías en el colegio? So how many hours of class did you have at school? And you'll notice tenías is the verb tener in the imperfect tense. Now, tenías is very typically irregular, but there is a lovely regular verb in the imperfect. How many hours of class did you have at school? Approximately, of course. You can compare your timetable with that of your children, for example. And I respond, pues no lo recuerdo exactamente, pero yo estaba en el colegio menos tiempo del que están mis hijos. So I don't remember exactly, but I was, the imperfect of estar, in school menos tiempo. I was in school for less time del que están mis hijos than for how long my children are in school. Íbamos más temprano. We went earlier. We used to go earlier. Pero siempre comíamos en casa. But we always ate at home. So comíamos, that's really the idea of having lunch at home. So we went early, but we were always home by lunchtime. Lunchtime, in a Spanish context, would be a little later in the day, perhaps 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, even later than that. So that's comer in the imperfect. Now, let's just skip on to the end of this section. Okay. So Rosa continues, ¿qué hacías? What did you do en tu tiempo libre? What did you do in your spare time? And I said, en mi tiempo libre solía leer. I used to read y jugar con mis hermanos y mis vecinos and play with my brothers and sisters and my neighbors. Then she asks, ¿ayudabas con las tareas de casa? Did you used to help with the housework? And I say, yes, ayudábamos todos. We all helped. From ayudar, again, we've got a nice imperfect tense there. Es cierto que mi madre se encargaba de la mayoría de las tareas domésticas. It's true that my mum took charge, se encargaba de la mayoría, of the majority of the household chores. Pero hacíamos cosas, but we used to do things como recoger nuestra habitación, like tidy our room, poner la mesa, lay the table, quitarla, clear the table, and then Rosa finishes off. So, again, that was probably quite quick. Hopefully you understood it, and hopefully it's good to see these imperfect tenses in the context of a conversation. Right, let's return to our slides. We've done our listening activity. In the masterclass, we would go through that whole conversation and talk in detail about each of the verbs and explain why they're in the imperfect, and of course talk about the meaning of everything in a little more depth. Obviously, I've gone through that quite quickly today. But what I'd like to do now is talk a little more about the masterclass and what the masterclass involves, because it's our special 6-month flagship course that's just about to start. And we've had thousands of learners go through the masterclass over the years. I think we launched the masterclass in 2016. And so since then, many, many learners have taken it. We've run it mostly once a year, sometimes twice a year. There is a masterclass that's just finishing now. Students have been working through the masterclass since the middle of last year. Is it finishing? Yeah, it's finishing in March. And we will be running this masterclass, and I'm not sure if there will be another one this year, but there's definitely this masterclass running from March through to, from March through to August. But I'll tell you all that in a moment. So the whole idea about this is that it's a series of lessons, but they're coffee break length, meaning that you can take them in a coffee break, 15, 20 minutes. Their coffee break style, very friendly and very approachable and very enjoyable. And of course, their coffee break quality. So everything has been very carefully prepared so that you are able to work through this material and build your Spanish knowledge over the course of the modules. Now, there are 6 modules in the masterclass. We're going to take a look at the curriculum now. And each module focuses on a different topic. So our first module, starting in 2 days' time, on Friday, the 1st of March, is on frases hechas. Now, if you don't know what frases hechas are, literally means made phrases. It's set phrases or idiomatic expressions. And the thing I like about this module is that it starts us off in a very friendly and approachable way, because it means that we are beginning to learn new expressions to make our language more colourful, shall we say. Not colourful in the sense of it's bad words or anything like that, but idiomatic expressions. In English, we use these all the time. Things like raining cats and dogs, perhaps we don't say that all the time. But the kind of idioms, it's a piece of cake, if something's very easy. And when you can use these idioms, then native speakers will immediately be more impressed with the way in which you're speaking Spanish. You'll sound more authentic, you'll sound more like a native speaker, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. So this is not just a list of frases hechas. I've seen many courses out there which say, let's teach you idioms in French, German, Spanish, or whatever, and it's literally a list of idioms. That's absolutely not what we're doing. What we do is put these idioms into context, and you're hearing them in conversations just like the one we've listened to between Rosa and myself. And over the course of the different modules, you'll hear lots of different voices. You'll hear voices from Spain, from different parts of Spain, but also from lots of different parts of Latin America too. So in Frases Hechas, you'll be learning about idiomatic expressions and how to use them in your own speech and in your own writing. That's module 1 in March. In what month are we? February, March, April, we'll be going on to tricky verbs, where we're looking at a particular group of verbs which are a little more challenging, a little more, in fact, some of them might be really common verbs that you're very familiar with, but they have different uses. I'm thinking of a verb like dar, for example. Dar means to give. And the basic meaning of dar is to give. So I give you a present. Te doy un regalo. But dar has lots of other meanings when it's combined with other expressions or idiomatic meanings too. So we'll be learning about the different meanings of very common verbs and how, again, you can use these. And because it's all about progression, you might well see some frases hechas seeping into the tricky verbs module because it's all about building on what you know. Moving on, module 3 is our false friends. So module 3 is going back to looking at vocabulary, and in module 3, we're going to be focusing on those words that you think you know what they mean, but in fact they mean something totally different because they look like words in English, but they have completely different meanings in Spanish. And again, it's about vocabulary, but you'll be seeing the grammar of module 2 and some of those frases hechas from module 1 coming into the grammar, lessons of module 3. And again, everything presented in fun conversations in different contexts, and you'll be able to enjoy these. In module 4, we're looking at tense mastery. That's when we're going to be looking at things like the imperfect that we've been talking about today, or perhaps the preterite and the difference between the preterite and the imperfect. The perfect as well. We'll be looking at the future and so on. Lots of different tenses covered in this module to help you really build and master those tenses. And then in module 5, that is where we're going to be looking at the subjunctive. The subjunctive is very much a topic that learners sometimes get a little worried about. But when you get worried about the subjunctive, there's no need, because in fact the subjunctive is really straightforward if you know the triggers and how to form the subjunctive, and that's exactly what we'll be looking at in module 5. And finally, in module 6, we are going to be looking at tricky Spanish. Tricky Spanish is covering different things like por and para. You're familiar, I'm sure, with por and para and the difficulty of por and para. Both could mean for, but they also can have other meanings. Unfortunately, we've got somebody posting lovely stuff in the comments that I'm trying to get rid of, but I can't quite do that. Let me see. I think you might be able to hear me now better there. So, yeah, if the team is around, perhaps someone could remove the commenter from the comments. That would be great. So, if you're seeing those comments, just ignore them, because we're not here to look at the comments. We're here to learn about Spanish. We're going to look now at the coffee break. It says coffee break French masterclass. It should be the coffee break Spanish masterclass schedule there. And we will now take a look at that. So I think at this point I'm going to disappear. Let me see if I can do this. Yeah, okay. So the schedule of the masterclass is running over 6 months. As I said, we're looking at 6 months worth of content, and every month there are 5 lessons. But you'll see here that the lessons are spread out over really the first part of the month. The first lesson comes on Friday the 1st, and then the next lesson comes on Monday the 4th. And then after that, we've got another lesson on Wednesday the 6th, and moving on from there, we've got other lessons. On Monday the 11th, you'll see that there's a different type of image there. And that is because on Monday the 11th, we're going to be doing an exercise. It's an exercise that will help you basically practice what you've been learning up to that point. The idea there is then that you'll be able to test what you've learned at that stage and work through the materials that you've been focusing on until that point. Then we go back to our normal lessons. So as of the 13th, Wednesday the 13th, you are then taking lesson 4, and moving on to Monday the 18th, lesson 5. And it keeps going like that over the 5 modules, and you'll be able to work through all of those lessons there. Now, in the end of the month, you'll see that at the end of the month, there is a different program, if you like. So we've got green logos there representing 2 additional elements of the masterclass. The first of these is our video review. Now, the video review is straightforward. It's basically a review of all of the content that has been covered in the module. And there's also a checklist to help you check what you've learned, to work through basically to see what you've been working on and to see how much you've learned, and you can tick things off as you go. And then what we're going to be doing at the end of each module is running a live session where we'll go through the test that you take at the end of the module and talk through some other materials there to help you really focus on what you've been working on and ensure that you've understood everything at that point. So that is the schedule of the whole month, and hopefully that all makes sense. Give me 1 second, if you don't mind. Okay. I am needing to take that off the screen. Let me see. Yay, I'm back. Okay. So that is repeated over the 6 months of the course, and we take the whole, basically that kind of schedule of lessons over the course of the 6 months. Okay, let's move on. The target audience for the masterclass. We get lots of questions about who the masterclass is aimed at, and the masterclass is aimed at a specific group of learners. And I'm guessing if you've been watching this, then if you've been following what you have been working on, then it makes sense that you are probably an intermediate learner. Let's take a look at our roadmap, if you like. This is the roadmap of learning of a foreign language, and we start at beginners, which is A1 level, and then upper beginners A2. And keeping going through all of this, we would work through B1 lower intermediate, B2 upper intermediate, and C1 advanced. The masterclass comes around that B1, B2 level, and it's really for learners who want to take their learning further at that point. And if you're confident already in using the basics of the language, but really want to make an improvement in your understanding and your grammar, then that is the masterclass perfect. That's the perfect target for the masterclass, the perfect audience for the masterclass. I should have said that if you've got questions, then please do post the questions in the chat. And it will be much better if we can have those kind of things in the chat. Maria's actually got a question here. If you miss a lesson or the live session, can you still see a recording of it? Absolutely. It's important to say that the lessons are self-access, so they're audio, video lessons, and that you're able to access them whenever you want and work your way through all of the lessons at your own pace. And in terms of the live lesson, then that will, of course, be recorded. Okay, let's continue on. The pricing of the masterclass, very important aspect. So let me just do one thing. Okay, the pricing is for the 5 lessons per month, so the 6 months, bonus activities, the module test, email check-ins, guaranteed feedback. I've not even mentioned that because when you do your homework for every lesson, you are going to be receiving feedback, and we will be there to help you, and you can ask questions, of course, and it means that you're getting all the support you need. And of course, at the end, you get a course certificate. Now, the full price of the masterclass is $599 for this course. However, we have got a special offer that is allowing you to buy it for $449, so $449. And that way you will benefit from a little discount at this stage. Okay, let's continue on. Have we got any questions? That is time for any questions you have. So please let me know if you've got any questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer the questions if the questions come in. I've got So let me just see. So Maria answered Maria's question. I've got a question that is not appearing here, but do I still have access to the Masterclass course after it's over? So that's from Rafal. Yes, you will have access to all of the materials, all of the lessons, all of the audio, the video, the lesson notes, all of that. You'll still have access to that afterwards. What you won't have access to is the feedback and the questions and so on. That finishes at the end of the masterclass session, if you like. Cecilia is asking, can you self-test to see if you're ready for the masterclass? We don't have a test as such. What I would suggest you do is go to our main masterclass page. Let me just show you that at the moment. Can I do this? Yes, I think I can. You should be able to see this. If you go to coffeebreaklanguages.com/masterclass, you'll be taken here and you can click on the Spanish Masterclass here. And if you click on Spanish Masterclass, you'll be taken to the landing page for our course. And when you get here, you will see a little pop-up saying, would you like to get a sample of the masterclass? There we go. Want to see sample the masterclass experience. So if you pop your email address in there and your name in there, then we'll be able to send you a masterclass experience handout, basically. And this will give you a better idea of the kind of content in the masterclass. And that will hopefully help you make a decision as to whether it's for you. Coming back, I'll just leave that on the screen so that you can go there if you've got any further questions. Tammy's asking, is there any written material? Sometimes it's helpful to be able to refer back to it. Absolutely, Tammy. There are copious lesson notes. Every lesson has a set of notes accompanying the lesson itself, which provide the transcript of everything, vocabulary and so on. But we also have a set of reference notes that go along with that content. So explaining further the conjugations of the verbs or giving you further examples. And of course, you can print all that off or store it as a PDF, whatever suits you best. So Deborah's asking, since the lessons are recorded, the dates are for when they are released. Exactly, Deborah. The dates that we saw in the schedule, that's when the lessons are released. You can, of course, access them whenever it suits you. I should have said that earlier, but we were dealing with other things at that particular point. Ari is asking, can we pay in euro? At the moment, the masterclass is available to buy in US dollars. We have to sell it in just one currency, and most, well, not most, but the most common currency that's accepted in most places, or that can be used in most places, is the US dollar, even though we're based in the UK. So you can buy in US dollars, but obviously your bank will automatically convert that. Ray is saying the classes are essentially one-sided, listen and learn, not two-way conversations. Yeah, so they're like all our coffee break lessons where you're listening and listening along and in a sense engaging with the materials and able to answer the thinking about what the lessons are covering. You'll be able to do that by listening to the content. But when it comes to the sorry, distracted there. When it comes to the live lessons, sorry, you can ask questions and we can help you in that. That's not a live lesson in terms of like a Zoom or something like that. It's a live video lesson with text comments and so on. Maria is asking, how do you claim the discount? So the discount is very straightforward. When you go to that page, as I said, let's just come here. When you come to this page, if you click on sign me up here, the discount is already applied. You'll be able to claim the discount there. So it's already applied on the page if you go there. Okay, Marcy is saying, how does the level of difficulty compare to Coffee Break Spanish Level 4 lessons? So it's a little lower in level. So if you're very confident with Coffee Break Spanish Season 4, I would probably suggest to stick with that and then move on to La Penúltima Voluntad, not the Masterclass. Marcy has just asked, and to the lessons with the book penultima voluntad. There we go. Your question has been answered. If you're at that level, the masterclass is probably not quite right for you. Phelps is saying, I've done a lot of your taster classes and love the podcast, but my ADHD has always been hard to keep learning consistent. Now managing better, is this a step too far, or if I haven't completed the entry and intermediate classes? So I would suggest, if depending on what level you feel you're at, if you found that conversation that we listened to straightforward, then yeah, go ahead and try the masterclass. There is definitely, because of the rhythm of the lessons, it's something that you'll be able to stick to and continually come back to. But if you are not quite at that level, I would suggest that you look at Coffee Break Spanish level 1 or level 2. And again, you can find these at coffeebreaklanguages.com/Spanish. Okay. Thank you for your questions. I hope that you have found this useful. And most importantly, I hope that you've learned something about the imperfect tense. We were looking at the imperfect tense earlier today, and hopefully it all made sense to you. One quick question before we go. Lindsay's saying, I missed it, but what would the time commitment each week would be? I didn't really read that question very, very articulately. Sorry about that. The time commitment, like everything we say, it depends on how much time you've got. You can very easily do the masterclass in about 15 or 20 minutes per day. The lessons themselves take about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. And of course, there's some written work. There's the homework activities that will help you correct. And there are the tests. But because of the way in which it's spread out over the month, it is something that you can hopefully easily manage with around 15 minutes a day or one coffee break. Thank you very much. I need to get ready for the French masterclass session, which is just coming up. For now, muchas gracias, como siempre, y hasta la próxima. And I hope that you do consider joining us for the masterclass of March 2024. Muchas gracias y hasta muy pronto.